teach in a New Testament department at a seminary. Another colleague, known for his worldwide connections, asked, "How did you become interested in the difficult and challenging questions surrounding the emergence of the church in the two-thirds world?" After all, the last 100 years have witnessed remarkable stories of emergence in Korea, many parts of sub-Saharan Black Africa, Latin America, certain countries of Eastern Europe, especially Ukraine, Romania, and Moldova, and elsewhere. The responses are sensible enough, since emerging and related terms are words that have been applied to these and other circumstances, including some fairly esoteric discussions in the philosophy of science. But during the last dozen years, emerging and emergent have become strongly associated with an important movement that is sweeping across America, the United Kingdom, and elsewhere. Many in the movement use emerging or emergent, I will use the two words as equivalents, as the defining adjective for their movement. A dozen books talk about the emergent church and stories of emergence and the like. One website encourages its patrons in emergent friendship, which turns out to refer not to friendship that is emerging, but to the importance of friendship in the movement, thus confirming that emergent is, for those in the movement, a sufficient label of self-identification, so that emergent friendship is formally akin to, say, house church friendship or Baptist friendship. At the heart of the movement, or as some of its leaders prefer to call it, the conversation, lies the conviction that changes in the culture signal that a new church is emerging. Christian leaders must therefore adapt to this emerging church. Those who fail to do so are blind to the cultural accretions that hide the gospel behind forms of thought and modes of expression that no longer communicate with the new generation, the emerging generation. The National Pastors' Convention and the Emergent Convention were held simultaneously in San Diego in 2003. Of the 3,000 pastors who attended, 1,900 chose the more traditional forum, the NPC, while 1,100 chose the other. Before attempting to outline its emphases, I should stress that not only is the movement amorphous, but its boundaries are ill-defined. Doubtless many, I have no idea how many, of the 1,000 pastors at the Emergent Convention did not, at that time anyway, consider themselves part of the emerging church. They were exploring, aligning themselves perhaps with some aspects of the movement, but not with others. By contrast, one reason why the movement has mushroomed so quickly is that it is bringing to focus a lot of hazy perceptions already widely circulating in the culture. It is articulating crisply and polemically what many pastors and others were already beginning to think, even though they did not enjoy, until the leaders of this movement came along, any champions who put their amorphous malaise into perspective. So it is not surprising that many books and articles that do not identify themselves as part of the emerging church movement nevertheless share its core values and thus belong to it without the label. One thinks, for instance, of Pete Ward's Liquid Church, or an essay by Graham Kings that analyzes evangelicalism in the Church of England. Some months ago I was speaking to a group of several hundred pastors in Australia and used the emerging church movement in America as illustrative of something or other. None of the pastors to whom I was speaking had heard of the movement, but quite a number of them described churches near them that reflected exactly the same values. In Great Britain, churches of the Baptist Union used to emphasize believing before belonging, reflecting their historical roots in the believer's church tradition. But today, the leaders of the Baptist Union encourage its member churches to reverse the priorities, first belonging, then believing. This parallels the priorities of the emerging church movement, even though the emerging church rubric has made only marginal headway on that side of the Atlantic. From these diverse tendencies, I infer that the emerging church movement is probably slightly smaller than some of its leaders think, and perhaps also substantially larger than some of its leaders think. Indeed, one perceptive observer has suggested that talk about the emerging church is already out of date, since the emerging church has already emerged. What characterizes the movement? 1.